The hallway outside the room erupted in controlled chaos within minutes. 2 more uniformed officers arrived, weapons drawn, followed by Detective Alvarez himself. Hair tousled as if he'd been dragged straight from a catnap. Rachel stood between the bed and the door, refusing to move until she saw the syringe secured. In an evidence bag, Alvarez nodded to the guard, who handed it over to one of the arriving officers. "Tell me what happened," Alvarez said, his eyes flicking from Rachel to the man in scrubs, now in handcuffs. Rachel kept her voice even. He came in claiming to do a routine medication check. "I didn't recognize him, and I knew she wasn't due for anything new. When I challenged him, he tried to leave, then reached into his pocket. That's when the syringe hit the floor." "Hey." Suspect didn't flinch. Alvarez turned to him, his name no answer. "Suit yourself," Alvarez muttered, signaling for the man to be taken to holding. "We'll get it out of him downtown." Rachel sank back into the chair, her adrenaline slowly burning off, leaving behind a leaden exhaustion. But she refused to close her eyes. Alvarez crouched beside her. "We'll run the liquid in that syringe. My gut says it's another sedative. Could have been worse." Rachel nodded but didn't look away from Rayleigh. He walked past the guard. "Past nurses?" "How we're going to find out," Alvarez said. "But you were right, Barbas's reach goes further than we thought. That facility was just one branch. There's a network, and they're scared enough now to try something. Desperate." The weight of that settled on her. She'd thought Port South Island was the end of it, the raid, the arrests, the flashing blue lights on the water. But in truth, it had been a beginning. The next morning, Rachel was escorted into a small conference room down the hall. Veras was there, along with a woman from Federal Task Force Special Agent Marissa Cole. Her presence alone told Rachel the scope had widened. Cole didn't waste time. "Mrs. Marin, the man from last night, is refusing to speak, but we've identified him through fingerprints. His name is Neil Granger, and he's connected to an offshore shell company we believe funneled money to Barbas's operation." Rachel's stomach tightened. "So this wasn't random, no," Cole said. "This was a cleanup attempt. Maybe in custody, but his associates are still active. They want to silence witnesses, starting with your daughter." The words chilled. "The air. What are you going to do about it?" Rachel asked. "That's what we're here to decide," Alvarez said. "We can keep you both in the hospital under heavy guard, or we can move you to a secure federal location until the trial. But there's another option, one I think you might want to consider." Cole slid a file across the table. Inside were aerial photographs, dense coastal marshland, narrow waterways, and what looked like small buildings hidden in tree cover. "We believe Barbas's network still has another operational hub," she said. "Our intel puts it within 50 miles of Port South Island. Smaller scale, but possibly where they moved certain materials before the raid." Rachel's throat went dry. "You think Rayleigh's images and others could be there?" Cole finished. "Evidence leads on the rest of the network. If we can hit it now, we cut the head off the snake." Rachel didn't even need to ask why they were telling her this. "You want me to help?" she said flatly. "We want you to confirm what's inside if we bring you in afterward," Cole corrected. "You've seen the kind of rooms they use, the equipment, the faces. You can identify things no agent can." Alvarez leaned forward. "I wouldn't ask this if I didn't think you could handle it, and if I didn't think it could stop them from coming after you again." Rachel looked toward the window, where the sunlight spilled in as if mocking the conversation. She thought of Rayleigh asleep 2 doors down, for still in her arm. She thought of the man in scrubs, and she thought of Port South Island, the factory floor, the conveyor belts, the warehouse air heavy with ink, and something far darker. Her jaw tightened. When do we go? 2 hours later, the hospital became a staging ground in miniature. Not the full flash ant siren chaos of Port South Island, but something quieter, more precise. Agents in plain clothes rotated in and out, briefing Alvarez in hushed tones. A laptop glowed in the corner of the conference room, showing live satellite imagery of a marshy spit of land that looked entirely unremarkable, less you knew what to look for. Rachel sat in the same chair, the file open on the table before her. The aerial photos were supplemented by stills from a surveillance drone, grainy but clear enough to make out structures. One central warehouse-like building, 2 smaller outbuildings, a dock jutting into dark water. She traced the dock with her finger. "That's where they'll move people," she said quietly. "Or shipments. Boats come in from open water there, and that building closest to the shore will be where they keep them before transport." Agent Cole nodded. "Matches what we've seen. We've been monitoring boat traffic for a week, but after Barbas's arrest, movement there increased. Could be they're consolidating." Alvarez leaned over her shoulder. "We can hit it today, but weather's turning by nightfall. If we wait, we risk losing them." Rachel closed the file and looked him in the eye. "Then don't wait." By late afternoon, she was in the back of a nondescript black SUV with Alvarez and Cole, heading toward a small federal marina. The drive was silent except for the hum of the tires on asphalt and the occasional crackle of radio chatter. "You understand you'll be in a secure perimeter until we clear the site," Cole said. "We're not throwing you into the middle of this. But once we're sure it's safe, we'll need you to walk the interior. Identify anything we can use in court." Rachel didn't answer right away. Was picturing the rope hanging from the ceiling in that viewing room, the metallic temps of ink and fear in her nostrils. "I'll do what needs doing," she said at last. The marina was a patchwork of patrol craft and unmarked boats that looked like weekend fishing vessels but weren't. A tactical team was already loading gear onto 2 fast interceptors short. Sleek, painted in dull gray. As they boarded, Alvarez gave her one last out. "We can do this without you, Rachel."
Oh.
No shame in stepping back. Rachel shook her head. "You're wrong.
Oh.
There's shame in looking away."
Oh.
The interceptors cut through the water with a steady thrum. The salt air stung Rachel's cheeks, the wind whipping her hair back, but she stayed at the bow, eyes fixed on the horizon. Cole pointed toward a smear of darker green against the slate-blue water. "That's our target," she said. Rachel narrowed her gaze. The island looked like 100 others in the region marsh grass. Low trees. A fringe of pale sand, but now she knew better. The team throttled down a mile out, switching to silent electric motors. The radio crackled with final orders. "Alpha team takes the dock. Bravo team sweeps the outbuildings. Secure all non-combatants. Detain and process every adult male. Move." Rachel stayed low in the boat as the first wave of agents leaped onto the dock, weapons ready. Shouts cut the air commands to drop weapons, get on the ground. Somewhere inside the trees, a dog barked frantically. From her vantage point, Rachel caught glimpses between the trunks. 2 men bolting toward the far side of the island, only to be tackled. A woman screaming as she was dragged out of one of the outbuildings. Then the crack of a single gunshot, sharp and close. Alvarez's voice barked into the radio. "Suspect down, medic, to Bravo's position." It was over fast, 15 minutes, maybe less. Then Cole appeared at the dock's edge, gesturing Rachel forward, safe to enter. "But you're going to want to brace yourself." Rachel stepped off the boat, her feet hitting the weathered planks of the dock. The air smelled of mud, diesel, and something sweeter underneath, like spoiled fruit. She followed Cole up the path toward the main building. Inside, the air was dim, heavy. The hum of fluorescent lights overhead mingled with the faint whir of cooling fans from computer towers lined against one wall. Tables were strewn with photography equipment lights, backdrops, tripods still holding cameras that hadn't been powered down, and there, on one table, was a pile of glossy covers. Rachel reached for the top one, her fingers trembling. It was Rayleigh, the same makeup, the same forced expression she'd seen on Port South Island. Only this one she'd never seen before, meaning it had been taken somewhere else. At some other point in her daughter's captivity, behind her, Cole's voice was low but certain. "We've got them, Rachel. We've got them all." Rachel didn't look up. Her eyes stayed locked on the photograph until the edges bit into her fingertips. The ride back from the island was silent, except for the drone of the engines and the occasional slap of waves against the hull. Rachel sat near the stern, her arms wrapped tightly around herself despite the thick windbreaker Alvarez had loaned her. She could feel the envelopes in her mind's grip, even though they were now locked in an evidence case in the boat's storage compartment. Millie's name in black marker had burned itself into her thoughts. She kept seeing that freezer, the layers of plastic, the cold that had crept into her bones. The mainland's dock lights grew brighter with each passing minute, halos shimmering in the mist. Federal agents were already waiting on shore, their silhouettes sharp against the glow. As soon as the boat's bowline hit the cleat, they moved in processing detainees, loading evidence crates into vans, logging every item into chain of custody forms. Alvarez stayed close, steering Rachel. Toward the waiting SUV? We'll take you straight to the safe house, he said. Different location this time. The hospital's compromised and your old one's blown. Rachel slid into the back seat without argument. She didn't even ask where they were going. Wherever it was, she knew it wouldn't feel like home. They drove for nearly an hour, leaving the coastline behind and winding into a rural stretch of road lined with pine and oak. The safe house was a modest single story, set back from the road and shielded by a dense stand of trees. Floodlights lit the driveway, where two armed agents stood watch. Inside, it smelled faintly of fresh paint and coffee. The furniture was basic, but clean, the kind of generic comfort meant to be invisible. Alvarez showed her the kitchen, the living room, and the small bedroom where she'd be staying. You'll have a detail here 24/7, he said. We've got cameras covering every approach. If anyone comes within 50 yards of the property, we'll know. Rachel nodded, but her thoughts were already elsewhere on Ray Lee, who was still at the hospital under heavy guard. Cole had insisted. She'll stay there until the doctors cleared her, especially after the attempted injection. Rachel had agreed reluctantly. But now, standing in the quiet of the safe house, the separation felt like a weight pressing on her chest. She sank onto the edge of the bed, staring at the blank wall. They're not going to stop, she said finally. Alvarez leaned against the doorframe. No, they're not. Then we can't just hide. That's not hiding, he said. It's buying time. We've taken 2 major pieces off the board, Barbos, and this site tonight. They'll be scrambling, trying to figure out how much we know. Rachel looked up at him. And in the meantime, they'll try again. Maybe not at the hospital, maybe not for Rayleigh directly. But they'll hit somewhere. Someone. Alvarez's jaw tightened. We're already tracking chatter. Something's moving through the network. Could be retaliation, could be relocation. Either way, we'll be ready. Rachel stood. Then I want to be ready too. Alvarez didn't answer right away. He studied her for a long moment, weighing something. You've already done more than most people could stomach, he said. Finally, walking into that island, identifying evidence most survivors don't even want to hear the word trial. Rachel's voice was steady. Most survivors don't have a network breathing down their neck. That got the smallest. Flicker of a smile from him, though it didn't last. All right. If you want in, it's on my terms. You follow orders. You stay within the protection detail. And you understand that if I tell you to walk away from a situation, you walk. Rachel nodded without hesitation. Deal, Alvarez pulled a chair from the desk and sat opposite her. Retaliation angle isn't just a guess. He picked up chatter on one of their encrypted channels. They're talking about a correction, their word. The timing lines up with what we've done to them this week. Problem is, we don't know what or where. Or who, Rachel said. He slid a tablet across the desk. On the screen was a grainy aerial shot of a marina rows of small boats, a warehouse on the water's edge. This was flagged in the chatter. There's no solid ID on the location yet, but the boat registration in the corner gives us a starting point. If we can pin it down, we might get ahead of them. Rachel studied the photo. The slant of the sunlight told her it was late afternoon when it was taken. The style of the warehouse roof, corrugated steel, slightly rusted, wasn't unusual for the coast, but the pattern of the dock pilings. She leaned closer. This isn't far from Port South Island. I remember those pilings, we passed them. On the way in, Alvarez straightened. You're sure? Sure enough that it's worth checking, she said. He tapped his radio. Cole, you hear that? Static crackled, then Cole's voice. Copy. I'll get a drone over that area. Within the hour, Rachel sat back, the adrenaline already creeping in. She'd been in the safe house less than 30 minutes. But the thought of staying here while something was in motion was unbearable. Take me with you, she said. Alvarez shook his head. No way. This is recon. We don't even know what we're looking at yet. You might not recognize it from the ground, she countered. I might. They stared at each other for a beat, the quiet between them full of unspoken risks. Finally, Alvarez exhaled through his nose. If Cole signs off, you ride with me. But you don't leave the vehicle unless I say so. Understood? Rachel said Cole didn't like it. Rachel could see that plainly when the agent arrived at the safe house 20 minutes later. Drone case slung over one shoulder. This is a bad idea, Cole said flatly, glancing between Rachel and Alvarez. Recon means eyes only, no contact. If we take her, we add another variable, and a very high-value target. I'll be in the vehicle, Rachel said. Windows up, doors locked. It didn't stop the hospital. Cole shot back. Alvarez stepped in. Shh, she knows the terrain. If this location's tied to the network, her eyes could cut hours off our confirmation. Cole exhaled hard through her nose, then snapped the drone case open. Fine, but you're not stepping out of the SUV, Marin. And if anything goes sideways, I'll be the one dragging you out, not him. They left in a different vehicle, a dark gray SUV, with tinted windows and plates that didn't scream government issue. Alvarez drove Cole in the back with her gear, Rachel in the front passenger seat. The roads narrowed as they headed east. Two-lane blacktop giving way to cracked asphalt that meandered through coastal pine forest. They passed no houses, no gas stations, just the occasional glimpse of water through the trees. When they finally rolled to a stop, it was on the shoulder of a road that ended in a gravel turnabout. Beyond that, a dirt track led to the water. Rachel recognized the scent first, brackish. Marsh and engine oil. Cole powered up the drone, the small quadcopter lifting silently into the air. Its camera feed streamed to her tablet, showing the dirt track from above. Then the water line beyond. There, Rachel said, pointing. That's the same roof line, and those pilings. Cole zoomed in, the feed sharpening. The warehouse sat about 100 yards from the shore, connected by a narrow dock. Several small boats were tied up, two of them rocking gently, as if recently disturbed. There's movement, Cole said, adjusting the angle. Figures emerged from the warehouse floor. Maybe 5 carrying crates toward one of the boats. Alvarez frowned. We're still 30 minutes from backup, and we keep watching, Cole said. Rachel leaned closer to the screen. The figures moved with purpose, not the casual pace of fishermen. The crates were uniform, heavy enough that each required 2 men to carry their moving product, Rachel murmured. People. Cole's jaw tightened. Not people, not in daylight. The feed shifted as the drone banked left. A second building came into view, smaller, but with a heavy steel door at its front. As the camera steadied, Rachel's stomach clenched. Zoom in, she said. Cole obliged. The door was open just enough to show a sliver of the interior dim. Light, concrete floor, and what looked like a pair of small bare feet just inside the threshold. That's a child, Rachel said. Her voice left no room for doubt. Rachel's pulse hammered in her ears. The bare feet on Cole's screen weren't moving, just pale shapes against the shadowed concrete. Every second they stayed there felt like a second too long. We don't have time to wait for backup, she said. Cole's head snapped up. We don't even know the situation. That could be it's a kid, Rachel cut in. And if those crates are going onto that boat, there's a chance they'll take them too. You know it. Alvarez's eyes stayed on the screen. Cole, how far are we from the building if we take the track? 2 minutes on foot, Cole said reluctantly. But if they see us coming, we'll lose the element of surprise and possibly the kid. Rachel leaned toward Alvarez, and we don't give them time to react. He studied her for a long moment, then reached under the seat for the go bag. He pulled out a compact pistol, checked the chamber, and handed it to Cole. Your point, I'll follow. Rachel, stay behind me, keep low, and do exactly what I say. Cole's eyes narrowed. You're bringing her in? She's the only one who can ID if this connects to Barbiz's network, Alvarez said. And she's not sitting in the car with an open line to whoever's inside. Cole muttered something under her breath, but didn't argue further. She killed the drone feed, stuffed the tablet into her pack, and slipped out of the SUV. The dirt track crunched softly under their boots as they moved toward the water. Rachel kept her eyes forward, resisting the urge to look at the marshland on either side. The air grew thicker, saltier with every step. They reached the tree line. In the warehouse loomed a head corrugated steel, weathered and rusted in places. The sound of voices carried faintly on the breeze, mingled with the thud of crates being set down. Cole raised a fist, signaling them to stop. She scanned the area, then motioned left, toward the smaller building, the one with the steel door. Up. Close, the door was ajar by less than a foot. The sliver of darkness inside seemed even heavier now, as if the air itself was holding its breath. Alvarez eased forward, his hand on the door. He looked back at Rachel once, the message clear. Be ready for anything. He pushed it open. The smell hit first a mix of damp concrete, sweat, and something metallic. The small feet Rachel had seen from the drone belonged to a boy, maybe 8 years old, sitting on the floor with his knees drawn up to his chest. His eyes were wide but unfocused, like he'd been drugged. Behind him, further in the gloom, were 2 more children. And at the far end of the room, half turned toward them, was a man with a clipboard in one hand and a sidearm in the other. Got it. I'll take part 4 into full length, 9,000 to 10,000 words. Keeping the same tone and pacing you've asked for, this will pick up right where part 3 left off, inside that small, steel-doored building with the armed man and the children. I'll deliver it as one continuous narrative, without extra headings. The man with the clipboard froze mid-step, his eyes narrowing as they adjusted to the light streaming in from the open door. For a fraction of a second, there was nothing but the sound of the boy's shallow breathing and the faint creak of Alvarez's boot on the concrete. Then the man's hand shifted on the pistol grip. Don't, Alvarez said sharply, his voice low but commanding. The man's gaze flicked between Alvarez, Cole, and Rachel. When it landed on her, his expression changed. Surprise exactly, but recognition. A small, crooked smile crept across his face. Well, he said slowly, the mother. Rachel's stomach turned cold. You know who I am? I make it my business to know, the man replied. Barbeau spoke highly of you, said you were trouble. Cole moved a step sideways, angling for a clearer shot without crossing Alvarez's line of fire. Put the weapon down and step away from the children. The man chuckled softly, shaking his head. These kids aren't your concern. Rachel's voice was steadier than she felt. They are now. Something flickered in his eyes' amusement. Maybe, or calculation. He shifted his stance slightly, keeping the gun low but ready. You think you can just walk in here and take them? You have no idea what kind of mess you're stepping into? Cole's finger tightened on the trigger. Last warning. Drop it. For a tense heartbeat, no one moved. Then the man's smile vanished, replaced by a flat professional coldness. He raised the pistol. 2 shots cracked almost simultaneously, one from Alvarez, one from Cole. The man staggered back, the clipboard clattering to the floor, and collapsed against the far wall. The gun slid from his hand. Cole was on him in seconds, kicking the weapon out of reach and checking for a pulse. He's alive, she said. Barely. Alvarez swept the room, eyes scanning the corners for any other threats. Clear. Rachel didn't wait for permission. She crossed the room and knelt by the boy near the door. His pupils were dilated, his skin clammy. She spoke softly, but there was no reaction. Sedative, Alvarez said, crouching beside her. Same signs as Rayleigh. There are 2 more, Rachel said, gesturing to the far wall. Cole moved to them, gently coaxing them to stand. They were both girls, maybe 9 or 10, and both swayed unsteadily when they moved. We need to get them outside, Cole said. Fresh air until medics arrive. Alvarez keyed his radio. Alpha to command. We have 3 minors recovered. 1. A DULT mail down with GSW, requesting immediate med evac and tactical sweep of secondary structure. A crackle of acknowledgement came through, followed by the distant thump of boots on gravel as more agents closed in. Rachel helped guide the boy toward the door, her hand firm on his shoulder to steady him. The air outside felt shockingly bright. After the dim of the room, She led him a few steps from the building before crouching to meet his eye level. "You're safe now," she said, even though she wasn't sure if he could process it yet. "We're going to take you somewhere safe." The boy blinked slowly, then whispered something she couldn't quite catch, leaned closer. "What?" "Boat," he murmured. Rachel glanced at Alvarez, who had heard it too. "What boat?" she asked gently. The boy's gaze shifted toward the dock beyond the warehouse. "Big one. More kids." Alvarez didn't hesitate. "Cole, with me. Rachel, stay here with them until the medics arrive." Rachel's whole body screamed to follow, but she forced herself to nod. The children needed someone right now. Someone. Who wouldn't disappear after barking an order? From her spot near the smaller building, she watched Alvarez and Cole slip along the side of the warehouse, weapons up. They disappeared around the far corner toward the dock. The sound of shouting came moments later, Alvarez's voice. Then another, deeper one. The distinct metallic clink of something heavy being dropped on would followed. Then a woman's scream. Sharp and cut off mid-breath. Rachel's pulse hammered harder. She kept her eyes on the corner of the warehouse, willing them to reappear. Finally, Alvarez emerged, half-dragging a man in dark clothing whose hands were zip-tied in front. Behind him, Cole guided two more children, a boy and a girl, down the dock, both of them barefoot and blinking in the sunlight. They were loading them into the cabin, Alvarez said grimly when he reached Rachel. "If we'd been 10 minutes..." Later, he didn't finish the sentence. Cole nodded toward the small group of rescued children. "Need exfil now. This place isn't secure until we clear the main building, and there's no telling if they have more muscle coming." Alvarez tapped his radio again, giving coordinates for the extraction point. The response came back fast. "Chopper inbound. 3 minutes." The thump of rotor blades soon grew louder, the sound echoing off the water. Rachel held the boy's hand until agents in tactical gear moved in to take the children toward the landing zone. She watched them go, her throat tight. When the last child was clear, Alvarez touched her shoulder. "You okay?" Rachel nodded. "Slowly, I'm fine." Then, after a beat, "But this isn't over. You know that, right?" His gaze met hers. "Yeah, I know." The helicopter lifted off with the children and the injured man, its downdraft whipping the marsh grass flat. As it banked away toward the mainland, the three of them, Rachel, Alvarez, and Cole, stood in the clearing, the warehouse looming silent behind them. And somewhere inside, Rachel knew, was the next layer of the network. The helicopter's echo had barely faded when the clearing fell into an eerie stillness. Only the whisper of the marsh grass and the faint slap of water against the dock broke the quiet. For a moment, Rachel stood with her hands on her hips, breathing in the salt-heavy air, trying to settle the surge of adrenaline. Then Alvarez pointed to the warehouse. "We sweep it." "Now?" Cole checked her sidearm and nodded. "Two-man entry from the front." "Rachel stays outside. I'm going in," Rachel said firmly, already moving toward the steps. Alvarez gave her a sharp look. "This isn't a rescue operation anymore. If there are hostiles left inside, they'll be dug in." "I've seen their setups before," she countered. "I know what's worth grabbing and what's a dead lead. It saves you time." Cole muttered. "It could also get you killed." But she didn't block the way. They approached the main door's double steel panels with rust eating at the hinges. Alvarez signaled for silence, then pressed his ear to the seam. The low hum of machinery came from within. He counted down with his fingers. 3, 2. Wong Cole yanked the door open, and they moved in low, weapons up. Rachel followed close behind. Every step measured. The interior smelled of oil, mold, and something else, something chemical that clung to the back of her throat. Shafts of dusty light poured through high windows, catching the swirling motes in the air. Rows of wooden crates filled most of the open floor space, each stenciled with numbers and a logo Rachel didn't recognize. Alvarez peeled one open with a pry bar. Inside, stacks of shrink-wrapped plastic packets gleamed under the dim light. "What is it?" she asked. Cole bent closer, eyes narrowing. Unmarked. She sliced one open with her knife. Rows of small vials filled with amber liquid rolled out. This isn't over-the-counter stuff. Rachel's stomach twisted. Same drug they used on Rayleigh? Possible, Alvarez said grimly. We'll have to run lab tests. They moved deeper into the warehouse. Cluster of workbenches stood against the far wall, covered with scattered tools, laptops, and cameras, professional-grade equipment, some of it still powered on. Cole began photographing everything. While Alvarez searched for anything resembling a ledger or shipment log, Rachel drifted toward a partially open side door.
Ow.
The corridor beyond was narrow and dim, lit by a single flickering bulb. The air grew cooler as she moved down it, her footsteps echoing off the concrete walls. At the end was another door, this one newer than the rest of the building, steel unmarred by rust. She hesitated, listening. Faintly, she thought she heard movement inside, like the soft scrape of something against the floor. She turned back toward the main room. Alvarez, the door behind her, clicked. Her body went rigid. Turned back. The door was now ajar, and the gap revealed only darkness. She took a cautious step closer. "Hello?"
Ow.
No answer then, from the shadows, a voice. "You shouldn't be here." A man stepped into the sliver of light, tall, broad-shouldered, his face mostly hidden under the shadow of a hood. In his hand was a short metal pipe, the end wrapped in tape for grip. Rachel's mouth went dry. "And you are?" The man smiled. Faintly, but it didn't reach his eyes. A loose end. Before she could react, he swung. The pipe whistled through the air where her head had been a moment earlier. She dropped to a crouch instinctively, the blow slamming into the wall. Behind her, Alvarez's voice roared from the main room. "Rachel." The man's head snapped toward the sound, and Rachel lunged forward, grabbing for the pipe. They struggled, the cold metal biting into her palms, wrenched it free, shoving her hard against the wall. Cole appeared in the doorway, weapon raised. "Drop it." The man hesitated just long enough for Alvarez to crash into him from behind, tackling him to the floor. The pipe clattered away, skidding into the corner. They wrestled the man into cuffs while Rachel pressed a hand to her ribs. Catching her breath, Alvarez hauled the man upright. "Who are you working for?" The man only smiled again. "You think this is the end? You've cut one branch. The root's still growing." Cole shoved him toward the main room. "Save it for interrogation." Rachel followed, her pulse still pounding. In the light of the warehouse, she saw the man more clearly, early 40s. A faded tattoo curling up his neck, the letters barely legible. She recognized them from Port South Island, etched on a wall in the viewing room. She pointed. "That's their mark." Same group. Alvarez's expression darkened. "Then we just caught someone who knows where the rest are hiding." They swept the remaining rooms, finding more crates, stacks of counterfeit IDs, and a locked office containing multiple hard drives and a wall map marked with pins. Many of the pins were along the coast, but several dotted inland cities, hundreds of miles away. Cole photographed it all. "This isn't just a trafficking ring," she said quietly. "This is a network with distribution routes." By the time they exited the warehouse, the extraction team had arrived to more SUVs and a second helicopter. The detainee was loaded. Into one vehicle, the seized electronics and drugs into another. Alvarez handed Rachel a bottle of water. "You did good in there." No, she took it, but her mind was still on the man's words, the roots still growing. Because if he was telling the truth, then this raid hadn't cut the head off the snake at all. It had just made it angry. An angry snake's bite. The SUV's tires hummed against the asphalt as the convoy pulled away from the docks. 3 vehicles in staggered formation. Rachel sat in the back seat beside Cole, who had her sidearm resting across her lap, eyes fixed on the road ahead. Alvarez drove, one hand on the wheel, the other resting on the radio mic clipped to his vest. Behind them, in the second SUV, the detainee from the warehouse hooded. Hands zip-tied sat, flanked by 2 armed agents. The third vehicle carried the seized evidence. Crates of vials, the hard drives, the map with its web of pins. The sun had dropped below the horizon, and the sky was bruising into deep purple when Alvarez finally spoke. "We'll take him to the regional field office first." Interrogate before transfer to federal. Cole didn't look away from the road. You think he'll talk? He's cocky, Alvarez said. Cocky ones talk sooner or later. So the trick is getting him to think he's in control.
Rachel
Leaned forward between the seats. You're not worried he's going to feed you lies? That's the beauty of a good interrogation, Alvarez said. You make the lies work for you. When they reached the field office, a low, squat building set back from a fenced lot, the detainee was hustled inside through a side entrance. Rachel stayed in a small observation room, separated from the interrogation chamber by a pane of one-way glass. The man sat slouched in a metal chair, the hood removed now. His tattooed neck was more visible here, the ink blurring into the stubble. Along his jaw, Alvarez sat across from him. No file, no notes, just a bottle of water he slid across the table. You want to tell me your name? Alvarez asked casually. The man smirked. You already know it. Humor me. Name's Dax. Dax what? You can call me Dax. Alvarez nodded slowly, leaning back in his chair. All right, Dax. Here's how this works. Me where the rest of the network is hiding. I'll see what I can do to make sure the feds don't bury you so deep you forget what daylight looks like. Dax chuckled. You think I'm afraid of prison? I've been in worse places. Rachel studied him through the glass. His body language wasn't that of a man under real pressure. His shoulders were loose, his breathing steady. He was playing the long game. Alvarez switched tactics. You know what I think? I think you're small time. It left you holding the bag while the big players moved on. That made Dax's jaw tighten just enough to catch Rachel's attention. Barbos didn't think much of you, did he? Alvarez pressed. If he had, you'd be somewhere warm right now, not in a freezing warehouse getting your teeth rattled by a mother who's been through hell. Dax's eyes flicked toward the glass, toward where Rachel sat unseen. His lips curled in a faint sneer. You think she's safe now? He asked. Alvarez's gaze didn't waver. Safer than you. Dax leaned forward, lowering his voice. Root's still growing, detective. And when it flowers, you'll know. Everyone will know. Before Alvarez could push further, Cole opened the observation room door. We've got a situation. Rachel turned. What kind of situation? Cole's expression was grim. Safe house perimeter sensors just tripped 3 times in the last 90 seconds. Either it's a glitch or someone's testing the fence line. Alvarez stood. Get her in a transport now. Rachel followed Cole quickly, her pulse spiking. Rayleigh's still there, she said. We've already sent a response team, Cole said. Until we know what's going on, you're coming with me. They exited through a rear bay, where another SUV waited, engine running. Rachel climbed in, Cole right behind her. Alvarez remained behind to finish with Dax. The drive to the safe house felt like it took hours, though it couldn't have been. More than 20 minutes. As they approached the tree-lined drive, Rachel saw the glow of headlights scattered across the property federal vehicles. Their light bars dark, but their presence unmistakable. 2 agents at the gate waved them through. Cole rolled down her window. Report. Perimeter breach confirmed, one of the agents said. We found cut fencing on the west side. Whoever did it is gone now. Rachel's stomach tightened. Or hiding. Inside the house looked untouched, but the air felt wrong, as if it had been disturbed. One of the agents met them at the door. We've swept the interior. No one inside. Your daughter's fine, still under guard in her room. Rachel exhaled shakily. She wanted to see Rayleigh immediately, but Cole caught her arm. Go in, there's something you should know. I found this in the grass outside the west fence. She held up a small object sealed in an evidence bag. Inside was a Polaroid photograph. It was of Rachel taken from behind through the window. Of the safe house bedroom she'd stayed in the night before the raid. On the back, written in thick black marker, were 3 words. We see you. Rachel stared at the photograph until the edges bit into her fingertips through the evidence bag. Out. The reflection in the window pane, the faint outline of her own shoulders, it was unmistakable. Someone had been inside the perimeter, close enough to watch her without her even knowing. They were here last night, she said, her voice tight. Cole's gaze didn't leave the photo. Could be older. Could be from the day before you moved in. Rachel shook her head. No, that's the shirt I wore after the raid. I left it on the chair in the bedroom. They saw me wearing it. Cole exhaled through her nose. Then they got closer than I'm comfortable admitting. Alvarez stepped into the entryway. Dax's interrogation clearly cut short. This was deliberate, he said, scanning the photo. A message, but also a test. They wanted to see how fast we'd react. And they know where she is, Cole added. Which means, Alvarez said, this safe house is done. We move her and Rayleigh before sunrise. Rachel's voice sharpened. And then what? Keep running. They'll keep finding us. Alvarez met her gaze evenly, unless we find them first. He pulled a folded piece of paper from his jacket and handed it to Cole while you were en route. I got something out of Dax. Not much, he's a pro at playing dumb, but he slipped a name, Grayport. Could be a location, could be a person. Rachel's brow furrowed. Grayport's a harbor town 2 hours south. Small, but it's a transit point for shipping. When I was looking for Rayleigh, I heard whispers about a drop point there. Fitz, Alvarez said. Dax mentioned Next Bloom in the south. If they're planning a move, Grayport's the kind of place you could bring something in, or take something out without much attention. Cole crossed her arms. We've got 2 options. Lock this place down tighter and wait for them to make the next move, or hit Grayport before they do. Rachel's answer was immediate. We hit them. Alvarez gave a slow nod. Then we move fast, before the message they left here turns into something worse. Grayport's harbor smelled of brine, diesel, and something faintly rotten beneath it all. The town was quiet this time of night, just a few sodium lamps casting pale cones of light across the slick pavement. Out on the docks, trawlers and small freighters rocked in the gentle tide, their masts groaning in the wind. Rachel crouched in the passenger seat of the SUV, peering through the half-open window. She could see the warehouse Alvarez had flagged a low, square structure at the far end of the pier, its metal siding, weather-streaked and patched with mismatched panels. A faded sign above the main bay door read Portside Storage and Freight. Cole's voice crackled softly over the coms. South side's clear. One truck parked in the lot looks like a refrigerated rig. North side's quiet, came another. Agent's report. Alvarez in the driver's seat spoke low into his mic. Hold positions, we go on my mark. Jill could feel the stillness in her bones. It was the same hush she remembered from the Port South Island raidcom on the surface, but charged with the knowledge that something ugly was waiting to be uncovered. Through the gap, between 2 stacks of shipping containers, she caught movement, 3 figures in dark clothing stepping out of the warehouse and heading for the truck. Even at a distance, their body language was deliberate, their glances sharp. One carried a clipboard. The other 2 began unlocking the rear doors. Alvarez's eyes narrowed. That's our load crew. Rachel's breath caught as the truck's doors swung open. Refrigerated air billowed out in a pale fog, curling around the men's legs. She couldn't see inside from here, but something about the care they took to men entering while the 3rd stood guard made her stomach tighten. A 4th man appeared in the doorway of the warehouse. This one was different, cleaner clothes. A leather jacket instead of a windbreaker, and a phone pressed to his ear. He stepped into the yellow pool of light under the lamp above the bay, and Rachel froze. I know him, she whispered. Alvarez shot her a quick glance. From where, cruise ship security, she said. He was on board the week Rayleigh disappeared. That was all Alvarez needed. He keyed the mic. Teams 1 and to move. The agents emerged from the shadows, weapons raised. The guard at the truck shouted a warning, and chaos broke loose. One of the loaders jumped from the truck's rear and ran. The other slammed the doors shut from inside. The man in the leather jacket dropped his phone and bolted for the side entrance. Alvarez was out of the SUV in seconds. Rachel right behind him, despite her promise to stay put. Cole cut toward the truck while Alvarez pursued the runner. Rachel rounded the corner of the warehouse just in time to see the leather-jacketed man disappearing through a narrow alley between buildings. She didn't think she followed. The alley smelled of fish guts and damp wood, the boards underfoot slick with algae. She could hear his footsteps ahead, quick and uneven, and the ragged sound of his breath. He glanced over his shoulder, saw her, and picked up speed. But the alley ended abruptly at the edge of the dock, and his momentum carried him straight into a stack of lobster pots. He went down hard. Cursing Rachel was on him before he could recover, shoving him onto his back. "Where are they taking them?" she demanded. He spat to the side, a bitter laugh escaping his lips. "You really want to know?" "Yes, to the root," he said. "Always to the root." Before she could ask what that meant, Alvarez appeared, hauling him up by the collar and snapping cuffs on his wrists. "We'll get it out of him later." From the front of the warehouse came Cole's voice over the comm. "We've got 6 miners in the truck alive but sedated, sending them to med-evac now." Relief punched through Rachel so hard her knees nearly gave way. But it was tempered by the echo of the man's words, always to the root, because the root, she knew, was still out there. Out. And it was getting closer. The man in the leather jacket, Marcus Kane. According to the ID, Alvarez pulled from his wallet, sat shackled to the bench in the back of the SUV, eyes fixed on the floor. He hadn't said another word since muttering about the root, and Rachel had the gnawing feeling that silence was part of his plan. Alvarez drove with one hand, the other holding a phone to his ear as he relayed details to the task force command. Cole sat in the back with Kane, a sidearm resting loosely on her thigh. "We've got one shot," Alvarez said once the call ended. "We press him before they realize he's gone. If we wait, they'll burn the location." Rachel leaned forward. "Then we make him talk now." Cole smirked faintly. Easier said than done. But Kane surprised them. As the SUV rolled out of Grayport, he lifted his head and said, "I'll take you to it." Alvarez's eyes narrowed in the rear view. Kane shrugged. "You've already got the truck, the kids, the evidence. My people will assume I'm compromised. My only card left is trading you the root for my skin." Rachel studied him. His tone was flat, almost bored, but she saw the tension in the cords of his neck. "What's the catch?" "No catch," he said. "But we go now. Tonight you want the root? You follow my lead." Alvarez didn't like it, but he made the call. They switched vehicles, brought in a backup team, and within an hour they were heading inland along a narrow, twisting road Kane directed them to. The air outside grew colder, the landscape shifting from scrubby marsh to dense pine forest. Finally, Kane told them to stop. Ahead, through the trees, Rachel could see the faint glow of sodium lights. The hum of a generator drifted on the wind. Alvarez motioned for silence. They left the vehicles hidden under the trees and moved on foot, Kane under heavy guard. As they crept closer, the glow resolved into a cluster of low buildings arranged around a central yard. Several trucks were parked inside the chain-link perimeter, their trailers backed up to loading bays. Figures moved between them, their voices carrying in the cold air. Rachel's stomach turned as she caught snatches of the conversation shipments. Schedules, quantities. This wasn't just a hideout, it was a hub. "The route," Kane whispered. "Every shipment in or out of this state touches here." Alvarez's jaw tightened. "How many inside?" 24, maybe more, Kane said. Rachel scanned the yard. The main building had heavy double doors, but a side structure, a squat, windowless unit drew her eye. Something about its isolation and the way 2 armed guards lingered near its door made her skin crawl. "That one," she said quietly. "That's where they're keeping people." Cole keyed her mic. "Alpha team on the north fence. Bravo, south. We hit on 3. They moved into position. Rachel's pulse hammered in her ears as Alvarez counted down. 3, 2, 1. The night exploded into motion. Agents surged over the fence, weapons up, shouting commands. The first gunshot cracked, followed by another. Figures scattered across the yard. Some dropped their weapons immediately, others ran for the trucks. Rachel stayed low behind a stack of crates, moving toward the squat building. A guard at the door raised his rifle, but Cole dropped him with a single shot to the leg, sending him sprawling. Alvarez rushed forward, slamming the door open. Inside, the air was close and damp. A row of makeshift cells lined the walls, each holding 2 or 3 people, most of them women, a few children. They flinched at the sudden light, their eyes wide. Rachel moved from cell to cell, her hands shaking as she worked the locks. "Safe now. We're getting you out." From somewhere deeper in the building came a sharp metallic bang, followed by a low hiss. Cole swore. Gas move. A white cloud began spilling into the corridor, burning Rachel's throat and eyes. Alvarez grabbed her arm and pulled her toward the door, coughing. Behind them, freed captives stumbled into the cold night air. In the yard, fight was nearly over, several suspects down, the rest on their knees under the watch of armed agents. But the gas had been enough to cover someone's escape. Rachel saw a shadow dart between two trailers and vanish into the tree line. She knew, without being told, that whoever that was mattered, because she'd heard it in the chaos, someone shouting a name. Barbeau's. Rachel didn't wait for orders. Sound of that name, Barbeau's cut through the sting in her throat like ice water. She bolted toward the tree line, her boots pounding the dirt, ignoring Alvarez shouting after her. The forest swallowed her quickly, the sodium glow of the yard fading to darkness behind. Branches clawed at her arms, the ground sloped unevenly underfoot. Somewhere ahead she heard the snap of twigs and the labored breathing of someone running hard. Barbeau's, she called into the night. The breathing faltered for half a second, then pushed faster. Rachel pushed harder too. She burst into a small clearing just as the man ahead stumbled over a route. He caught himself against a tree, and in that flicker of stillness, she saw his face older than she remembered from the photograph in Alvarez's case file, hair gone to steel gray. But the eyes were the same. Sharp, calculating Rachel Marin, Barbeau said, his voice almost conversational despite the distance between them. You've been a thorn in my side. Her chest burned from the chase, but she steadied her aim with the pistol Alvarez had pressed into her hand earlier. You took my daughter? I returned her, he said smoothly, healthy, unharmed. More than some could say. Rachel's jaw clenched. After you sold her, he shrugged. Business. Nothing personal. The words settled like a stone. In her gut, it was personal to me. He tilted his head, studying her like she was an interesting puzzle. You think killing me will end this? No, she said, but it will end you. Before she could pull the trigger, he moved fast. Far faster than she expected for a man his age, throwing a handful of dirt and grit into her eyes. She flinched, blinking against the sting, and he lunged, knocking the pistol from her hand. They hit the ground hard, rolling. He was stronger than he looked, his hands closing around her throat. She dug her fingers into the earth, found a sharp rock, and smashed it against his temple. He grunted, loosening his grip just enough for her to twist free. She scrambled for the pistol, found it inches from the toe of his boot. He kicked it away and swung at her, but she ducked, driving her shoulder into his midsection and sending them both crashing into the base of a tree. He coughed, spat blood, and in that moment Alvarez appeared at the edge of the clearing, weapon raised. Freeze. Barbeau froze, eyes darting between them. Slowly, he raised his hands. Cole emerged seconds later, covering his flank. We've got him. Rachel stood, chest heaving, and stared down at the man who had haunted every nightmare for the last year. Get him out of my sight, she said, back. In the yard, the last of the captives were being loaded into emergency transport. Evidence teams were already swarming the buildings. Barbeau was shoved into the back of a secure van, cuffed and shackled, his eyes never leaving Rachel's until the door slammed shut. Alvarez came to stand beside her. It's over. Rachel didn't look away from the van as it pulled out. For him, not for me. He studied her for a moment. You going to be okay? She let out a slow breath. I don't know, but Rayleigh's safe. That's enough for... Now, the dawn broke as they left the compound, light spilling over the treetops and painting the world in gold. Rachel sat in the back seat, watching the road unwind ahead. The fight might have been over, but the echoes of it would be with her for a long time, and somewhere, deep down, she knew it could grow back. But if they did, she'd be ready. 2 days later, the air along the coast smelled clean again. The noise of sirens, helicopters, and shouting was gone, replaced by the soft rhythm of the tide against the shore. Rachel stood on the back porch of a small cottage. The Bureau had borrowed for her and Rayleigh. It wasn't permanent nothing in witness protection ever really was, but it was quiet, safe, inside. She could hear Rayleigh humming to herself as she unpacked a box of books. The sound was warm, alive. A melody Rachel thought she'd never hear again. Alvarez stepped onto the porch, a coffee in each hand. He handed one to her without a word. "You heading out?" she asked. "Tomorrow," he said. "Bose already in federal lockup. He's not getting out. And the rest of his crew's talking more arrests coming." Rachel took a slow sip of coffee, watching the horizon where the sea met the pale morning sky. "Feels strange," she admitted. "Like I've been holding my breath for a year, and now I don't know what to do with the air." He smiled faintly. "You breathe. You live. You take your daughter to school, and if the shadows ever move again, you call me." She met his eyes. "I mean it, Alvarez. If there's ever a trace of them left, I'm not running. I'm finishing it. I believe you." He glanced toward the door where Rayleigh appeared, barefoot, a shy smile on her face. She ran to Rachel and wrapped her arms around her waist. Rachel held her close, breathing in the scent of her hair like it was the first and last time. The world felt still again. It's not because danger was gone, it never really was, but because, for the first time in months, Rachel had one. Somewhere. The roots of Barbus's empire might still twitch in the dark, but they would wither without him, and if they didn't, Trell would be ready with the same quiet. Relentless resolve that had carried her this far, she kissed the top of Rayleigh's head, at Alvarez's nod of farewell, and stepped back inside. Closing the door against the wind, this time, it wasn't a barrier to keep danger out. It was the threshold of a new beginning. That night, after Rayleigh had fallen asleep, Rachel stepped outside once more. The sky was clear, and the stars hung sharp and cold above the water. There, for the first time in a long time, she felt the night. Watching her without menace, she pulled the Polaroid from her jacket pocket. The one they'd left as a threat, and dropped it into the fire pit by the porch. The edges curled, blackened, and finally crumbled to ash. The past was still there, etched deep, but it no longer owned her. Rachel turned, closed the door behind her, and locked it not out of fear, but out of habit. She walked down the hall. To Rayleigh's room, paused in the doorway to watch her breathe, then switched off the light. When she lay down, the silence felt different. Not empty, just peaceful. And in that peace, Rachel let herself do something she hadn't dared in months. She slept. There's nowhere left for the plot to go, without starting a brand new arc. Barbos is caught, the network dismantled, and Rachel and Rayleigh are safe.